end with an array of objects. There's also this idea of overloading the constructor if you want to have random information in here. Like when you make an object, like in this example, we have the bouncing ball, right? Just one bouncing ball that goes around. Let me zoom in, make this a bit larger so you can see. I hope with this bouncing ball you see similarities between this and your building. So there are a couple key differences between the like whatever language you first learn, object-oriented programming, JavaScript or Java. And Python does things a bit differently. Like underscore underscore init, this keyword, it likely will show up on your quiz. This is called the constructor. And that's what's called when you first make an object. Notice that you always have to pass in this keyword self that refers to yourself. For example, if the self keyword wasn't down here, it wouldn't know who's x, who's y it's referring to. Okay. Same with like move. If we ever want to use your variables, known as member variables, and they're also called instance variables. Each instance of an object, each time you create one, they have variables tied to it. That's what it means. Okay. Now let's say I wanted to create an object, this ball, but when I create the object, I want to give it some random color. You may want to do that, like instead of random color in your building assignment, you create random heights and widths along with like a number of windows. So this idea will hopefully help you out. Notice that, let's say we'll create a new variable. I'm adding on to the demo code I showed. Let's do self.rColor. We'll just start there. Maybe it'll be some shade of red for this ball, and maybe you want to do like random number between 0 and 255. That's what we're really used to seeing. But when we do something like this, and notice I'm just declaring it as a member variable or an instance variable here, I press run, and then Python complains. And I have to look into the real reason why Python doesn't like this kind of syntax. It doesn't like having your constructor having like random information here. It prefers that you have set values. Notice 50, true, false, and 20. They're always there. They're always the same. But suddenly when you try to give it a random number, it complains. It says object not callable on blah, blah, blah line. And that's just the random line I gave it. You're like, uh-oh. So what's one way we can get around this? So instead of, yes?
So I am like using like this type of stuff for my like Skyline project.
Yes.
And I've been doing it like that, but I have to do like random
Dot uniform?
uniform.
Okay. Thank you, Claire. Random dot uniform like this, and then you click run, and you can get a color. Oh, sweet. Oh, okay. Easy way to fix it. Random dot uniform. Thank you very much. The idea still holds. There's a longer way to do it, but also involves a more involved computer science concept, but thank you so much. Random dot uniform fixes this. Now I have a random color here, so let's use it. So now, in ellipse, right when I make my ellipse, I'm going to have self.rColor, and now I'm going to be some random shade of red each time I run my program. So I'll stop, I'll run it. This is a darker red, it's kind of hard to see. If I stop my program again, now it's a brighter red. And if I run it again, it's somewhere in between the bright red and the dark red. Got darker. Let's make it a bit larger, 100 by 100. So thank you so much. The other way you can go about doing this, and this is called overloading your constructor, is pass in more information. Like you go back to thinking about functions, like the ellipse function takes in 4 numbers. It could also take in 5 numbers or 3 numbers. This different number of variables that you give it can affect its kind of behavior. And so if we want to add in more information, we can do that by adding in another variable here. Call this one red shade. And notice where I'm adding it after the init function. So this is one way to do it. Maybe now I can do self.rColor equals the shade of red I want, equals red shade. But now when I call it, notice that now I'm just not referring to myself. Now I can put in a number, and this is going to help me control the red value. Just like how when you call an ellipse function, you can control its x, y, width, and height. So I added in another variable here, and I'm using it down here. As I scroll down, this one, you can now still refer to self.rcolor. But notice that if I try to run this now, it complains. It tells me, init takes at least 2 arguments, but only one is given on line 43. Let's scroll down. Line 43. Now when I create my ball named Bob, I have to give it a red value, maybe 150. And any other time I refer to Bob, when I'm creating Bob for the first time, I have to give it now that one number. Yep. So now Bob is going to be created with that said value, and the workaround here is that if we do random this one, I hope that it will work. Yeah, random.uniform, random number. I forget the functions. They're very similar. So you get the similar behavior from here. Questions, comments? So now you can help you with random.uniform or overloading a constructor to help you change positions of your buildings, whether that's the varying on the X or the different heights. This will help you out. Okay, next big idea. It's related to the second example I have here on the slides. Notice that you draw a bunch of buildings that go across the screen. You may want to use an array of objects to help you generate that, like one building's next to another. Maybe you don't want them to overlap. You want to do some kind of calculation there. So this second example will help you use lists or arrays to get that going. Let me copy and paste this. I'll save this one, go here. So in my city skyline, I created an array of objects. When I run this code and I click it, right, an array gets generated, and that's my buildings. My stars are all random positions, but when I click my screen, that's being shown. All right, so array of objects. Here I should have random called outside draw. It doesn't like this, math.import. So this was working yesterday. So I'm using that overloaded constructor idea. I'm using like a more complicated version of that constructor. Is that it? Okay. Now if I click run, it still complains. Function object has no thing uniform. Import random. All these libraries are getting me mixed up. Okay, so here, notice now I have like a bunch of balls that bounce, I think starting at different positions, and then bounce at the same time. It's kind of laggy. Only 10 of these are being drawn to the screen. But it's trying to do animation each time. So each frame, it updates by a couple pixels with each ball that has a different kind of pixel, so that's why it's kind of slow. But notice how in this example, which is posted on the slides, this part right here, you have an empty list. I called them Skittles. They all happen to be the red ones at the time. And now we can update the colors some more. But now you have a for loop, as you used before in your turtle, in your previous assignments. And now we're going to use append. You're going to add to your list a certain number of objects. In this case, they are the ball objects that we just created. Notice the overloaded constructor, we take in 3 random numbers. I think that represents the speed in addition to its starting coordinates. And then down here, to help you draw your buildings, notice that when you have your array of objects, you have 10 like buildings. Here I have 10 balls. Each of them, you have to tell each of those objects, okay, first you move, then this is what it means to bounce, and lastly, show yourself. So be careful there. You have to go through each of your items and tell them, okay, this is how you move, this is how you bounce, this is how you show. And that is inefficient, but it gets you the result. Especially when you have a static image, it's going to be a-okay. Right? And that helps tie together some of the concepts you worked on before, and pay attention to syntax, otherwise known as how you type your code, the spelling of it, because that's really important when working with these objects. All right, that's it, Computer Programming B. I hope you can complete your assignments by tomorrow. Let me know if you need an extension. It's this object idea, and hopefully after this we'll go do what do I have up next? Maybe building on this, we can do Battleship, or someone requested, and I always wanted to do this. It's like we'll make. Have you heard of Tamagotchis before? Like a virtual pet. Yes. So then maybe we can make that using the object idea. But we have to find out how you save things. Like within Trinket, I know you can do this outside of processing with a website. You can save some data to kind of keep track of time and like your creature's like current lifespan and things that are happening. But it may not work well in Trinket. But that's what I have lined up. All right, code away.